Thank you, Father Burgos. I have to say it's a source of amazement that I'm here at all, and that we're here at all, because 25 years ago, it was hard to believe that this would continue. In fact, the beginnings of the Institute, I guess about 1997, were really in, well, I have to say it, they started in total failure. You know, I was doing a PhD here in Cambridge in process. I was expecting, with my wife Denise here and our 3 kids, I was expecting that I would go back to the United States and get the teaching post that I had anticipated. It didn't work out. It was a total failure. I failed the interview. It just didn't work. So we were looking at each other thinking, well, we could go back to the US, or what could we do if we stayed in England? And so we were asking around the people that we knew, Bishop Callistos, Bishop Basil at the time, others, well, what if, we're in Cambridge, it's a kind of academic town, what about starting an Orthodox Institute in Cambridge? Which sounds like a crazy idea, but at the time, there were people, one after another, who said, you know what? We've got lots and lots of good scholars around the country, but we don't have an institution. And this is just the right time. And so from the top down, Professor David Ford and others, Eamon Duffy, others in the university said, this is a time for orthodoxy in Cambridge, because otherwise it's an Oxford thing. And there was, as divine providence would provide, it was exactly the moment when the university, the theology faculty was rethinking how the future of theology, and they saw that there was this gap. There was no real Orthodox presence in the academic program of the university. So that was just one of the many things that happened that opened up doors that turned weakness into strength. And so if I would, I have various biblical passages that have punctuated our life. One of them is, my strength is made perfect in weakness. And I always felt that that was important to keep at the forefront, both personally and institutionally. That as soon as you begin to sense that everything is okay, you're fine, you've got it all under control, that's the beginning of your decline, at least spiritually. So that was, honestly, that's exactly how it was. It started from nothing. We were sitting at our kitchen table thinking of these things, passing it around. The Reverend Dr. John Binns is here. He was the rector of Great St. Mary's, the University Church, very welcoming, one of the many. So when Father said at the lunch today that generous orthodoxy is going to be one of the themes today. Well, it's not generous orthodoxy only, or even at all. This institute is only possible because of the generosity of the people in Cambridge who are not Orthodox. It was a welcoming spirit. It was a friendly, open spirit. And I could say, without mentioning all the names of people involved, because I was told I have maximum 10 minutes, so many people were involved, but there was a spirit of freshness, of openness, of optimism, and I'd have to say, of fun. Can I say that about a theological institute? It was actually fun. And it was surprising as the doors opened one after another. Little St. Peter's up on the hill, we had our first services there. Also in St. Michael's house, which at the time was still is part of Great St. Mary's. Very open. I remember one of the organizational meetings, Bishop Callistos, of blessed memory, was there, and he was about to leave with then Bishop Basil to go back to Oxford, but he hadn't had his pudding yet. And as he was walking out the door, he noticed that the puddings were already prepared there. And he had his coat on already, and he said, "Oh, I do like pudding." And so he stopped there with his coat, but that gives a sense of the enjoyment of the process. Samantha Good is here. Dave Good, her husband, will come along a little later, involved in stamping the books for the library, in putting the cables in for the computer system over at Wesley House. So many little human interventions that made it an enjoyable enterprise as we started out. But it was a different world, a different Orthodox world. It was an optimistic world. The Soviet Union had collapsed. There was a sense of openness in the Christian world emerging out of 70 years of Soviet oppression. There was also the openness in that international sphere. And so that generosity was felt. Now, coming up to today, it's a different world. It's a different world. There's much less optimism. There's fear. The conditions of world orthodoxy, it's fragmented. The subsequent history of the Institute had many, many hardships and difficulties. It's a different kind of world, but the Institute is still here and will have to retool its direction maybe for the next 25 years. It's not enough to just kind of keep doing the same thing. There comes a time where within this orthodoxy, something new is needed. One of the other phrases that was always with me as we were in those early years of the Institute came from Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. That was always part of the generous Orthodox kind of ethos of the Institute. But now I think there's a second verse, at least a second verse from Philippians that's important, and that is, speak the word of God without fear. Later on, St. Paul says, not to be frightened by opponents. It's a time where clergy right now are being defrocked in Russia for speaking against the war, refusing to do a prayer for the victory of the Russian troops. So things like that, and that's not the only place. There comes a time where the Institute can't just be a neutral ground for scholarship. Yes, scholarship, but scholarship in service of the church, and scholarship also in service of those who don't have a voice. This is where the world is now, and the Orthodox world in particular, that we're going to be going into for the next years, a courageous way. Now, I told Denise, because I want to underline that this was a joint initial family project that then expanded, but I said I would call on her to say a word, just a word, about, or a couple words, about her perspective on these 25 years.
So it was
you can stand up.
Okay. I have to say, it was the most fun thing I've done in my life, to be in Cambridge those years, and to work with my husband and so many other people to build this place where now there's all these people here. Wow. But I feel, yes, the Orthodox world is struggling, it is fragmented, but one thing that is still very hopeful and optimistic in my mind is that we are still in Cambridge, and that university goes on, and the federation goes on, and there's still the feeling that we have a lot of potential and a lot to contribute. And we should keep that in mind when we get discouraged. And I guess I would just want to say, the Institute needs to fill its own shoes. Like, it's standing, but it's can stand really proud and firm and keep going. It should not be afraid.
Okay. Thank you.